Welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. I'm Pastor Chris, your host. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast is an opportunity to explore issues. It's also a time to help you get to know some people at Shepherd of the Hills. We have so many wonderful people here in our church, school, and childcare, and I have the privilege of helping you to get better acquainted with many of them. And today, I'm very excited to welcome our friend Alice Klement. Alice, welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I've noticed your lineup on those podcasts. Those are pretty impressive people.
It's elite company, and you belong right there.
Thank you.
Yes. So I want to talk about your background, your career in ministry. We celebrated at the 50th anniversary of the church, 50 years of ministry for Alice, which was really exciting.
Shocking, yes.
Began ministry when you were 6 years old.
Yes,
it's just amazing.
That's exactly right. I was out in the woods having a little class.
But first of all, I thought we might start with the most current. I think a lot of people who know you might be interested to know, so what is Alice doing nowadays?
Well, I'll tell you, prior to my retirement, it was kind of a scary time because so much of my identity is wrapped up in this place. And so I was thinking, man, what am I going to do when I retire? I knew I couldn't eat bonbons and watch soap operas. That wouldn't last very long. So I really began to pray that God would lead me to some meaningful ministry. And it was kind of scary while I was waiting for an answer. I thought I would get associated with the Center for Refugee Services. I'd worked with them before, but that didn't work out. I went to University Methodist Church. They have a lot of community activity. That didn't work out. And I had contacted Craig Chihak with Navigators, which is an international organization that ministers to international students as well as the military all over the world. And he invited me in. We are a great team. Our strengths just complement each other. We're very opposite in the way that we teach and the way that we administer programs. And so it's just, I really hit the ground running with them and have been some of the things that we've done prior to COVID is a lot of interaction on campus, both at UT and in the Health Science Center. We did a lot of hikes, we did lunch and learn on Tuesdays, and just many other parties and things to build relationships with the international community. So that's what I've been doing. I have, how many? I have a Monday night Zoom and Learn discussion group, and Craig runs that. I lead a Tuesday night Bible study, and it's really mentoring two people in discipleship to get them to take on some people and have their own small group. One is a gal from the Netherlands, and one is a gentleman from Nigeria who lives in Chicago. Could only do that with Zoom, we would have never thought of that otherwise. And then I have a Wednesday night UT Zoom and Learn, and then a Thursday morning, women from Shepherd. We've been practicing discipleship. We've been walking together. Saturday night, I have two people from China that live here, and this is a discipleship relationship, and one gentleman that lives in China. So I couldn't be more thrilled with the path that God has mapped out for me in retirement.
Wow, that's wonderful. Sounds like not a lot of time for bonbons and soap operas.
No.
Yeah.
No, although I do have to watch the COVID-19 or whatever it's called, that putting on weight.
One thing we'll talk about in your covering your career later, I feel like it took a very interesting direction toward international ministry as your career progressed. And you can certainly see how that's just bearing so much fruit now with the things that you're involved in, and how technology is making a lot of that possible with Zoom.
It's really a God thing. How could I have orchestrated that? I couldn't have. It was a God thing.
Yeah. Well, let's then look at that the life that God has mapped out for you. I'm always curious about people's upbringing and how that made them into the people that they are. And so can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how that shaped your values and made you the person you are?
I'll try to make it brief. And I would encourage all of our viewers to do this, to just map out the highlights of your life and watch, the high points and the low points. Map that out and see how God has been with you through your whole life. It's such a rewarding thing to do, and really a faith-building thing to do. I was born in north central Wisconsin. Marshfield is the name of the town. There's one couple here that knows where, or maybe a couple people know where Marshfield is. It's in the middle of nowhere. Actually, I was raised on a dairy farm. I always say I had a very idyllic upbringing. I say I had a Laura Ingalls Wilder upbringing. I said that on staff one time, and one of the younger people, like the woman behind the camera, and I think maybe Micah kind of although Melody would probably know, chimed in, who is Laura Ingalls Wilder? And then I really felt old. But the point of the story is, it was just poetic. We went to a little church, and our social life revolved around this little church on the hill out in the country. And that's along with my parents' teaching, that was where I learned about Jesus. I had a very strong faith in God. I can remember my confirmation was so meaningful to me. I really expected Jesus to speak to me from the clouds, but he didn't. But I've often had a real sense of where he's guiding and directing me, and one of the paths that he led me on was to decide to go into Lutheran education. Mm-hmm. And I went to, the nearest Concordia was Concordia St. Paul, and it lets you know how far north we were. Yeah. And so that's how I started in my career as a Lutheran school teacher.
Uh-huh. And where were you a teacher?
Started out in Saginaw, Michigan, and Margie Breen will know Saginaw, Michigan. People from Michigan always show Michigan as a mitten, right, and Saginaw is right there, right south of Frankenmuth. But anyway, it was so exciting. Oh man, I feel old. This has been, I really feel old. Back in those days when there was a call night where the people graduated and you were assigned to go to teach or preach if you were at a seminary, you never knew where you were going. You didn't have a choice. Right. So out of the clear blue sky, I read this call document that says Saginaw, Michigan, and I had to go on the map. They did have a map there. I had to go on a map and look it up and found it. It's a beautiful area. Yeah. It's a beautiful part of our country. Stayed there for several years. I'm blanking out on the number now. Taught third grade, and I was married there, and had I was very surprised and saddened when my husband asked for a divorce. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you now, as we map our life's journey, the ups and the downs, that was definitely a down. It took me a long, long time to recover from that. Yeah. But I can see how God used that for his kingdom work. It built compassion in me. In this idyllic growing up place I had in central Wisconsin, I didn't experience grief. I really didn't experience the downs in life. So this divorce taught me a whole lot about empathy with people, and that was the big lesson.
Can we stay there for a second?
Sure.
Because I'm sure a lot of people who are listening have been divorced or have family members who have been divorced. How did you recover from that?
I didn't recover very well, and when we do divorce care here at Shepherd of the Hills, I always encourage people. Divorce care is a wonderful program, as is Grief Share with Mark Lackey. Wonderful programs that are based on sound psychological principles that lead people to healthy healing. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that. I didn't go to a counselor. I did have a principal at my school that was wonderful to talk to, but I did not recover well. I put my name on a call list and began teaching in Milwaukee, and I was there 14 years, and I call those my wilderness years.
Really, 14?
14 years.
14 wilderness years.
I should have gone for counseling. But through all that, boy, did God work. Now I can see it as I look back. You don't see it when you're in the midst of it. You're miserable. Yeah. But when you look back, you see God working. I longed for small group. Why isn't there a Bible study in this church that I could be part of? Why isn't that? Well, if I can go on, I'll tell you about this church I ended up at.
Please, let's go.
Big, huge, in the northern tier of states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Nebraska, Missouri, Minnesota, we call that the Lutheran Loop.
Oh.
And it's a huge Lutheran population there. And in Wisconsin, where I was from, there was every square block had a Lutheran church, a Catholic church, and a tavern. So that would mark every block you went way out in the country, you had a Lutheran church, a Catholic church, and a tavern. You had to do something in the cold winter. So what was I talking about?
Well, we were talking about recovering from divorce. We were talking about coming out of those wilderness years.
Yeah, wilderness years. Yeah. The things that I was missing in those 14 wilderness years, I was missing a small group of people that would support me and pray for me and talk to me. I was missing something like divorce care. I saw all of these things that this great big church, that's where I was, the very large church, very traditional, and it was the kind of church where the kids went away to college, probably Madison, and came back. They came back there. So to break into that church socially, to get involved in that church was very, very difficult. I didn't care because the teaching situation was fantastic. Our principal was known throughout Synod. He was a real trendsetter. And so I kind of gave up my hopes for that church in favor of working at that, ministering at that school. Well, then people were getting transferred in. We were in a western suburb called Elm Grove. People were getting transferred in. And they were looking for schools. And the public school system in Wisconsin is excellent. So the parochial school system has to be super excellent. Yeah. And our school was. So people were moving in, and the parents of my kids would start to ask, well, how do you get involved in this church? And I have no idea. I've only been here 14 years. I don't know. But that got me involved on some district-level assimilation boards, and I started bringing some assimilation ideas it was called assimilation in those days, to the congregation, and then I was given a half a day off to work in assimilation. Well, that was like having two full-time jobs. I was working in the congregation, and I was teaching 5th grade.
Yeah.
So I put my name in a call list again, and this is really seeing the hand of God. Back in those days, back in the early 80s, nobody did what I wanted to do. I got, from this call list, I got inquiries of youth director. Well, I knew I didn't want to be a youth director. I knew that wasn't my calling. Yeah. But Shepherd of the Hills called me, came down for an interview, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that was 94 that you joined?
Was it? I think so.
Something like that, yeah.
The early 90s it was then.
Yeah, it's interesting. Right. It's always interesting how a person's background shapes the rest of their life. You've always been so big on getting into a group, being a part of a community, because you were there personally one time when that was really what you needed, was to be connected with other people, to have that support system.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you came here, and you came not as a teacher. That was in the past now. You were full-time church staff. My
title was Minister of Family Life, if you can believe it. It was so funny because we don't call staff people ministers up north. So I thought, I'm a minister of family life.
And what other titles did you have while you were on staff at Shepherd? You had more than one.
Did I?
Well,
I know people tease me about that all the time, but it kind of morphed into equipping.
Yeah. And was it the same job the whole time you were at Shepherd? So what were you doing originally, and how did that change over time?
Well, Pastor Dan and I were the two full-time ministry staff, and I did anything that didn't involve preaching, anything that Pastor Dan wanted to see in this church, but of course he didn't have time to get things moving. So it was like Sunday school, vacation Bible school, family ministry, family parenting classes, and things like that. Mm-hmm. Then as more staff was added, I was able to morph into different positions. And it was so much fun and so exciting. One thing I've learned is I don't think God allows a ministry to be stagnant. If a church is stagnant and not moving with the times or what's happening in the neighborhood, something's probably wrong. And my ministry changed. Shepherd of the Hills ministry changed. It's been the 25 years I was here were really exciting. Yeah. So I became acquainted with what's called equipping ministry, and I know that wasn't a good choice of titles. People thought I took care of the lawnmowers, equipment ministry, and it's really taken from that verse in it's Ephesians, isn't it, where it talks about the pastors and teachers equipping the laity for the work of ministry.
Right,
I'm roughly translating that, paraphrasing it, and that's that. There was a movement of equipping in the big church with a capital C at that time. So I took classes in both coasts. I've been on both coasts for a couple of weeks on each and learned about equipping. And I believe so strongly that God intends the laity to do ministry because the staff there's too much to do. The staff can't do it all.
Priesthood of all believers, right? The body of Christ.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's biblical.
That's what equipping is.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with lawnmowers.
Nothing to do with lawnmowers, no. Tell me, what were some of your biggest joys in ministry at Shepherd?
There were so many, and I wish I could name names, but I know that I will forget people. But the joy of helping people find I've been accused of being good at telling people where God wants them to serve, but that I think that is kind of, if I might be presumptuous, I think that's kind of a gift God gave me when I morphed into this equipping ministry. He kind of, and it was new to me, the ability to see where people could be plugged in, where they would have meaningful ministry, not just to fill a slot.
Right.
So when people found their niche, that was so exciting, and we started ministries, and it was so neat. When I first started here, people would come and ask me permission to do this, that, or the other thing, and as we moved along, they'd tell me what they were doing and ask if I could help with this, that, or the other thing. I think, getting back to your question, the most gratifying ministries were probably Stephen Ministry and Christ Care. And, we talked about how ministry keeps changing and moving. We don't have either of those ministries now. Christ Care isn't even in existence. But both of those ministries came out of the same place, out of the same group of people. And what I found so gratifying about those is the people coming back. Well, first of all, they had really heavy-duty training. So people who committed to either one of those, Christ Care is small group leaders, and Stephen Ministry is those that go and walk alongside somebody going through a crisis. Right. Both of those ministries have such heavy-duty training that people are really equipped to do them. And when they would come back and report about how God used them, and people would just be aglow. That was very gratifying. And then my other really gratifying thing, and that didn't happen just in those two ministries, but I just know how much people prepared, and so I think they were kind of surprised when they put all that work into it and God used them in mighty ways.
What do you know?
And the other thing was international ministry and being able to, the most exciting thing And I remember coming in your office one time. The most exciting thing about international ministry was being able to share the gospel with somebody that's never heard it. Yeah. I remember after our 9:30 Chinese Bible class, I stumbled into your office and kind of fell on the wall and said, I just presented the gospel from start to finish to somebody who's never heard it. Wow. It was, oh, gosh.
Yeah, I know you developed such a passion, not just for people coming from other countries, but people who had never heard the gospel before. I think that was the bigger piece of it. And it just so happened that they were coming from other places. But to have been an instrument of God to bring the good news of salvation to somebody, to make an impact for their eternity, it doesn't get any better than that.
I think Satan, too, Satan is the father of lies. And I think Satan tells us people are going to resist that. They do not want to hear that. You're going to make a fool out of yourself. I really think Satan tells us that. And so when God began to bless our international ministry, I was just amazed at how open these people, they were. Well, like one of the first guys we worked with said, I want that peace that Christians have. How do I get that peace? Yep. And they were eager to hear. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know, they do still. COVID makes it more challenging. They want to know everything American. And they think Christianity is American.
What advice would you give to someone in sharing the gospel if a person listening, watching, were to encounter someone who doesn't know the gospel? What do I say? Where do I even start?
Pray. A little short popcorn prayer. Lord, here's somebody that looks receptive. Help me. Mm-hmm. God honors those prayers. Oh, God honors those prayers. So anyway, I would just... Oftentimes people are ripe to hear the gospel. Americans are ripe to hear the gospel when they're in trouble and there's a crisis they can't handle on their own. Yeah. And sometimes you can say, you have no control over this situation, do you? And listen to them. You know, listen to what their pain, what their hurt is. Yeah. And then you can oftentimes follow it up with, we never really have control, do we? We think we do, but we never really do. But what's helped me in my life, and then you can go on to tell.
What's helped me in my life? What a great turn of phrase there. So it becomes a testimony. Mm-hmm. Wow, and you can't argue with the person's story. That's right. Their story.
You can argue with the Bible, but you can't argue with a person's story.
Yeah, and maybe you've heard this saying, sometimes we are the only Bible other people will ever read.
Christian, don't you know you're a sermon in shoes?
There you go. That one too. So definitely some wisdom there on sharing the gospel. Another thing I wanted to ask for your advice on from your experience is you were known for being bold and asking people to serve. Yeah. Like you said, God gave you a gift to help people identify their gifts and how they could use those for his glory. Sometimes we're afraid to ask other people to do things, even in a church setting when we know it's for a greater good. Or sometimes people would like to ask for help for themselves, but they're afraid of being rejected. What would you say to someone in one of those situations about asking someone to do something for help in some way, not to be overly timid, but to be appropriately bold?
Well, I learned after I retired, many people came and told me how I asked them over and over, and finally they just said yes. I think that was my boldness, only because I forgot. It's not because I was wanting to ask them over and over again. I just forgot I asked them in the first place. Didn't keep my very good record, so that was my technique. But yeah, first of all, I would say don't apologize and don't lie to them. Satan is the father of lies. And again, he's going to say to you, this person, gosh, you're imposing yourself upon their time. These people are so busy. Why are you asking them? They aren't going to want to do it. But if you see yourself as the hands and feet of God, the voice of God, and if you remember that verse, I think it's in Galatians about we are God's workmanship, created in him, and he has good works for us to do, created in advance for us to do. Mm-hmm. And you can be a conduit to invite that person into ministry. That's a high honor. So go into it not saying, I know you're so busy, and they told me at the board I had to ask, you don't want to serve on this board, do you? You don't want to do that. You want to go boldly and say,
Right.
we've been praying about somebody to join us on this ministry team, and we really think you would be a great addition. And I totally recommend that people email first with that message and then a really good job description of what you're asking this person to do. How long is it going to take? Who is there that this person can go to if they have a question? How long are you asking them to serve? Hopefully not more than a year. 2 years are good, because the ideal thing would be for them to serve and learn the ropes 1 year, and then the second year they bring somebody in to replace them, and they can train that person right away. That's really an ideal. But after they've gotten your email, giving them a couple weeks to think about it, pray about it, and then asking them, calling them, or meeting in person and asking if there are any questions, or how I can explain further. Oftentimes, they will accept off of the email. That's what I found.
Yeah.
I know it sounds bizarre, but they do.
So, some things I'm hearing from you. One is be organized, think it through ahead of time, give them as much information as you can so they have that to work with in their decision. And then secondly, don't make false assumptions. Yeah. They're too busy. Well, busy and finding purpose are not the same things. There are some very, very busy people who would love to add something that would give them purpose. I don't think I mentioned that. That's so important. You want to match somebody with a position where you see they have the gifts and talents for that. Because most of us know that when you're serving God and using your gifts and talents, there's no greater joy. Well, golly, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I feel the purpose, to have a purpose in life, is something that all people long for. So you want to, if you can offer someone that opportunity, wow, you're really, and you're acting in God's stead. He left us here to do his work. Absolutely. Switching gears a little bit, can you tell us about your travels? You've gotten to go to some interesting places, mission trips and other things. What have been some of the favorite places you've traveled to?
I do love to travel. Most of my travel, my international travel, has been mission trips. The very first one here at Shepherd was a time when I thought, this congregation, I am telling you, this congregation is the most loving, generous group of people you will ever find anywhere on earth. But I had a strong sense that now was the time for people to take themselves and instead of money, go yourself. And so we put together a trip through the Missouri Synod to Hong Kong. Yep. And Hong Kong it was a wonderful trip. It was a life-changing trip for perhaps all of us. One of our team members went into the ministry after that. One became very involved in Nepali ministry. Yep. One became a Lutheran school teacher. Yeah. So God really blessed that first trip.
You're right.
And then I've been through the Lutheran Women's Missionary League. I've been to Poland and Macau. And then I felt God really saying, again, you could ask this congregation for anything, and if you could prove to them it was something needed, something God was laying before them, they would give to it. So I started thinking about that Hong Kong trip, and I thought, not many people are going to want to go on educational trips like that. Most people want to do humanitarian. And so that's when the Haiti experience started. We need another podcast to talk about the crazy things that happened in planning that and how God stepped in and rescued it.
Oh,
but for now, I will just say that, that COVID and everything, now nobody's going to Haiti. But it's such an experience we've had as a congregation in Haiti. And relationships being built, which was my dream. We're not just going to go over there and work and build something and then go home and never see them again. I really dreamed that we would go back and build relationships with the people there.
Right. Yeah, some great things have come out of those trips for the congregation. I know for you personally and for many other individuals personally.
Anybody that goes on a trip abroad like that comes back changed.
Yeah. What is one fact about Alice that most people might not know?
Then I was going to tell you about the Estonia trip. I went to Estonia just a year or so before I retired, and that has been a milestone in my ministry, not because I did much, I just taught English, but I discovered the little country of Estonia. It's a fairy tale place that was over 90% Lutheran before the Soviet occupation, and then it flip-flopped, and now it's like, 90% unchurched.
Yeah.
And I met the Lutheran family there their goal is to bring Estonia back to Jesus. And, go to, what is there? It's TAT, Tartu Academy of Theology, EST for Estonia.org. And what a story that is. And I'm still meeting with the pastor there, and I support them financially. It was, I don't know, it's just a real God thing. I just felt so drawn by God to get involved with that fairy tale country.
Was that the one where you stopped by my house one time so I could help fill out a application to apply for a grant? I remember reading, about the situation as a part of that, and definitely a great mission opportunity.
Right. We didn't get the grant, but other things have happened. Yes, I think I had 45 minutes to get that to the post office.
Yes, I remember things were moving fast at that point. Yeah.
Oh, what was your other question?
Well, I was going to ask, what is one thing about Alice that most people might not know?
I thought about that question. I thought of a couple things that are really embarrassing to me, so I'll
Oh, good. Here we go now.
Oh.
You don't have to share anything you don't want to. And any non-embarrassing things you'd like to share.
Well, everybody knows everything else about me.
Oh, okay.
I won a cow judging contest once.
I'm sorry, say more?
I won a cow judging contest.
You won a cow judging contest?
Yes.
How do you win a cow judging contest?
Just like a beauty contest. You have these cows lined up, and I was in 6th grade, I think. You have these cows lined up, and you look at them. And you look for different things.
And what did you do to make your cow so beautiful?
It wasn't my cow. I was judging.
You were the judge. I thought you said you won the contest.
Well, I did. I won a cow judging contest because there were a bunch of us younger people that were judging the cows, and then they had a professional cow judger, and I chose the same cows. This is so ridiculous.
You were good at judging cows.
I was good at, if anybody needs their cows judged, I can maybe help.
You think you could do that today?
I remember. I'm not sure.
Wow. There's another podcast right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another thing.
Well, final question I had, not that we can ever top that one, but anything else you like to do for fun?
No, I was going to tell you another thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are we out of time? I was going to tell you another thing.
Nope. We're good.
Since I'm saying my embarrassing, I'm just perspiring. This is very traumatic for me. I went to a one-room country school.
I'm sorry?
I went to a one-room country school.
A one-room country school. That's not all that unusual.
Yes, it is. It makes me feel very old. I think I was with Laura Ingalls Wilder. I think she was my classmate.
You were classmates. No wonder you knew her so well.
I find that very embarrassing. I don't know why. Because I don't feel as old as I am. Anyway, what's your other question now?
Oh, that's all I had.
Oh, okay.
That was my list.
I should have been quiet when I had the chance.
No, it's just getting so much fun here at the end. Well, it's been fun the whole time.
Oh.
And thank you so much, Alice, for doing this. This is great.
You're welcome. I had fun, too, most of it.
And I hope that you all had fun with this as well. It's been very enjoyable to visit with Alice. And I invite you to join us next time for the Shepherd Podcast. Until then, may the Lord bless you with health and safety, and God's peace be with you today.